has had a very difficult time with COVID. My thoughts and prayers go to anyone that has suffered or lost a loved one. How wonderful now that we can move forward with hope and optimism for the future, for better days ahead. Congratulations to the 2020 Living Legends recipients. Larry Barth, who continues to inspire us all year after year with his magnificent artwork. Jet Brunet, who is a remarkable artist, carver, always taking it a step beyond, which is describable. Dan Brigette, a fellow competitor who is supportive, kind, and generous to everyone that crosses his path. His sculptures leave you with a sense of awe. To be recognized as a living legend, I am very proud, and I hope that I will do my best to live up to this award. Thank you, Tom, at Wildfowl Carving Magazine, which has helped so many carvers along their journey. During this past year, there's been many postings on Facebook's book of your carvings, from beginner to expert. Always a pleasure to see, a great way to share with each other. I also have to mention Floyd Schultz, who has shared his process, allowing us into his world with humor. He has inspired and sustained us. We have laughed with him and at him. Thank you, Floyd. There are others, you know who you are, with words and photos of encouragement. I'm sorry I cannot show you any work today that I have been working on, but I have been working. I trust I will in 2022 back in Ocean City. In the meantime, I'll leave you with my motto: always have fun. Stay true to your vision. It may not be everyone's liking or catch the eye of a judge, but it is your creation. So celebrate each accomplishment and imperfection. Keep inspired, walk in nature. Thank you for being a part of this amazing family of carvers. See you in 2022. Until then, stay safe, stay well. Call anytime. I'm always here in my studio. Love to everyone.
Hello, my name is Ross Smoke. This is my carving shop. Come on in, look around. So, the shop was built in 1983 when my dad retired as a school teacher for Salisbury. He wanted a shop, so he built a double car garage. He had it built, and we made it into a wood carving shop. So, over the years, Dad carved here for years and years, and we've held classes here. We've had, we have shop night. We have all kinds of stuff like that going on. Now, as you can see, when you become a carver, you become a collector. Here is some of my wood collection. Okay, so I got my cedars, my pines, cottonwood, some cork, hardwoods up top for bases and stuff. More wood over here. Then over here we have our big tools, I call. Our bandsaw to cut birds out, joiner to keep blocks straight, drill press to do hollowing out and drilling keels and everything else. Sanders, the drum sander, the little belt sander, the flap sander, and a couple of small dust clenchers my dad built. My dad built the drum sander, so that was a good thing. Then we come over to the Fordham tools. This is our Fordham tool area, dirt area. I run fans behind that, just kind of keep all the dirt in one area and run those dust collector a little bit. Then you come over here to the wall of unfinished projects. So this wall has been accumulating since 1983, and some of the projects are Dad's. There's just a couple of my brothers, a lot of mine, and just other people and all kinds of stuff. The shop is heated with a propane heater, keeps it above freezing so I can store paint and stuff here. And also has a wood stove for scrap wood and unfinished projects. So this area here is where I we do some work. I also do all my gluing and just general, laying outs of bodies and heads and stuff. And then, like, this was Dad's desk. He sat here for years carving. That's where he worked, and now we use it for a workstation, general workstation, or just to keep stuff here to carve. So this area over here, this is my area. This is where I keep all my projects. This is the stuff I'm working on now. As you can see, I got a bunch of stuff going on. Hopefully I'll get all that cleared up. Then we work ourselves over. My dad was smart enough, he put water in the shop so we can have water down here to paint with and stuff. And then this area here is where I sit. And you can see, I like to knife carve, so I have plenty of knives. As I said, you become a collector. I like to collect knives. So I also have my little grinders, also have my measuring tools and everything like that. So I have been fortunate enough that my family allows me to carve 2 nights a week. So I carve 2 nights a week. Now that I'm retired, I carve a couple other days a week. So I am also honored to carry on the tradition of our family here in Salisbury carving in this shop. So that's the shop. So have a good day. Thank you.
The Worcester County Arts Council is pleased to support the 2021 Virtual Ward World Championship Wildfowl Carving Competition. We have supported this artistic competition, usually held in Ocean City, for the last few years and look forward to continue building our relationship with the Ward Museum. As part of our mission to support and promote the arts in Worcester County, we are committed to initiate and sponsor activities throughout the county to encourage community involvement in the arts. We strive to bring the arts to underserved areas of the community by supplying free resources such as high-quality art exhibits, activities, and performances designed for a large range of age groups. Through our grant programs, we have awarded over $800,000 to support the artistic endeavors of local nonprofit community organizations. Over the years, our scholarship program has awarded over $250,000 to college students pursuing an arts degree. Our summer arts camp encourages and expands children's love of the arts as they explore a variety of art forms. We invite artists throughout the region to participate in our plein air event held in September. Our support of the arts continues with exhibits, juried shows, and contests. To better serve our diverse communities and maximize the impact of our projects and programs, we continue to strengthen and expand our outreach by partnering with other county agencies such as the Worcester County Public Schools, Worcester County Tourism, Worcester County Parks and Recreation Center, and local public libraries. The arts are essential to creating healthy, vibrant, and safe communities. We at the Worcester County Arts Council look forward to continuing to foster the excellence, diversity, and vitality of the arts that will enrich the lives of the people of Worcester County.
Mi nombre es Ale Ríos, soy natural del pueblo de Bayamón, Puerto Rico. Nos conocen como los vaqueros. Soy un tallador de aves que lleva sobre 25 años tallando aves. Y la talla de aves es mi pasión y es lo que me ha hecho recorrer el mundo y el sustento de mi familia. Tuve una gran maestra con una gran visión que se llama Rosabel Suárez y ella fue la que me motivó y me habló por primera vez del mundial y quien me llevó a competir. En esos años también estuve otra maestra que se llamó Subcraft y Leonie Dick, con él también aprendí a hacer las patas en bronce. En mi caso he podido conocer grandes talladores como Larry, Floyd, Bob Goody, Ashley, Doug, Tom, Gerald Payne. De verdad que en todos estos años son gente que me han ayudado, me han orientado y de verdad que cada año pues, que voy a competir y a compartir con ellos, pues de verdad que es una experiencia súper brutal. Esto no es tan fácil como parece, no es como coger un pedazo de madera y tallar un ave o sacar una forma. tenemos que hacer un estudio de cada especie, de cada ave, para luego poder plasmarlo en la madera y llevarlo a su máxima expresión, y eso es lo que yo he ido realizando en estos 25 años que llevo como tallador. Mis piezas tienen algo siempre especial, desde la punta del pico hasta la punta de la cola, siempre tienen esa esencia de que parezcan vivas, y cada una de ellas siempre se lleva algo de mí, algo siempre de Ale Río. Así que estaré recorriendo algunas áreas de mi taller para que vean más o menos el proceso de cómo tallar un ave. Estaré realizando un boceto básico de cómo sacar una plantilla para tallar un ave en madera. Siempre es importante hacer un estudio del ave o de la especie que quieres tallar. Luego de haber hecho el boceto del canario mangle, luego lo corta, saldría algo como esto, y eso se pasa a la madera. Luego que se pasa a la madera, se usa este tipo de máquina que se conoce como un sinfín, y con ella pues vamos a hacer ya los cortes principales. Y luego de cortar la silueta en el sinfín, sale ya más o menos de esta forma. El tipo de cuchilla que utilizo es un exacto, es este tipo de cuchilla, es una cuchilla que se usa de refill, y por lo general hay que tallar siempre protegiendo los dedos y tallando hacia afuera. Y ya cuando estamos más o menos en el segundo paso, comenzamos ya a sacar lo que son las primarias, las secundarias. Ya en el tercer paso, ya ahí estoy dibujando las plumas, que se dibujan de esta manera. Ya ahí entonces pues comienzo lo que sería el quemado de las plumas. El quemado de las plumas lo hago con este tipo de herramienta, que es un cautín, que es a base de caliente, o un pilograbador. Luego de haberle hecho todas las plumas, todo el cuerpo, ya entonces pasamos al área de pintura. La pintura que uso es óleo con pigmento natural. Uso ese tipo de pintura porque me da esa terminación de realeza. Y luego de ver todo el procedimiento de cómo tallo un ave, cómo lo pinto y cómo hago las patas en bronce, pues aquí le presento el producto final. Mi nombre es Ale Río y este es el Wild World Championship.
You can never have enough reference, right? Now, why can't ducks just be clean? Why can't they be like fish and just swim in the water and not get dirt and mix it with the water and just make it all murky and muddy? I don't know. If I would have known that before I put this aviary in my backyard many years ago, would I have still done it? Probably so, because it's really helped me out as a decoy carver to have my own aviary with live reference. When I first started carving, I had talked to a couple of carvers, and they told me that they had an aviary with live reference, and I thought that was pretty cool. I had an aviary of my own, but I had just had some doves and some quail in it. I didn't have waterfowl, so I thought, what the heck, you know? I'll build a bigger aviary in my yard and put some water in it. And so I got to thinking about it. I do live in the city, so I was a little skeptical about it, but then I went ahead and put it in. Luckily, I have a pretty good sized lot, so I was able to put a decent sized aviary, not too big. If I lived out in the county or out in the country, I probably would have put something 3 times this size, and it wouldn't have been as beneficial, because I feel like this small aviary is giving me an opportunity to be really up close to my waterfowl, to be able to study them. You know, I could just be a couple of feet from them and just you know, observe them when I'm carving and everything. So it's been great. I'm glad I have a small aviary in my yard, and I've had it for quite a few years now. The aviary, it's probably about 20 by 15, and the pond's about 10 by 10. It's large enough for them. I have some areas that are deep for the divers so they can dive in. A little bit about the upkeep. Yes, it is a challenge weekly. The key is to keep fresh water in for the birds so they can remain healthy. So you have to keep clean water in. Yeah, the weather out here in Central California, it gets pretty warm in the summertime. So I usually have to change it 2-3 times a week to keep the water fresh. The wintertime, since I don't have a lot of birds, I can go maybe about a week without having to change the water because we do have some pretty cold days throughout the winter, so it's not too bad. The food that I feed them, it's a high protein lay crumble. I do throw some scratch in the water for them and some grass and everything, and they can dive down and eat and do all that sort of things that ducks do. As far as the upkeep, it really hasn't been too bad. It's just a regular maintenance. All my birds, they are free flight. They're not Pindian. I wanted to have free flight birds with their primary so I can study them and not have one primary taken off. So they're all free flight, and since they are free flight birds, I have lost a few over the years. Squirrels have chewed through my netting, and I haven't noticed in some teal, and birds have gotten out. Hopefully have gone on to bigger and greener marshes out there. But it hasn't been too bad. I haven't lost too many birds. I've gotten careless a couple of times when I've been cleaning. I left the door open and I had a couple of birds get out that way. But other than that, it's been pretty good. I get my birds from a game breeder. There are many breeders across the country. So you can purchase waterfowl from game breeders, and they give you the proper paperwork to have, and they are toe clipped. All birds are toe clipped. So if you're ever checked by the feds, you have the proper paperwork, and then they can check your birds to make sure that they're toe clipped, because that will tell them that they were pen raised. You just can't go out in the wild and capture some ducks and put them in an aviary, or bring home some wingtippers if you've gone out hunting. So that's pretty much frowned upon. So they have to be pen raised and they have to be toe clipped. I don't breed any of my birds, so I don't have a breeder's permit. So I'm not able to sell any, but over the years, my hen pintail, they have laid a nest and had babies. I even had a drake mallard in here that was that crossed with my hen pintail, and I ended up having a couple of hybrids, a hen and a drake hybrid, which was really, really cool. So anyway, I just basically give my birds away to some friends out here that have open aviaries on their property. It's been really nice. I don't, there's some great videos out there on YouTube that you can search, so it's not really necessary that you have to have an aviary for reference, but it's just an added value to your reference collection. But there are so many excellent videos out there now that are just as useful to watch. What really helps me out is when I'm up in my shop and I'm working on a decoy, and I come into some areas that I'm just have some questions about on the anatomy, and the pictures just aren't helping me out. I can come out here and I can observe my birds, and I can get a three-dimensional view, which is really, really helpful. That's why having possibly clay models, or carving something out of cork beforehand, or having something prior to your final project to use for reference, but having the live reference and seeing the anatomy up close is really, really beneficial for me. I can come out here and I can really see how relaxed the birds get, how big their heads can be. You get to see all the different feather groups and how they are on the body as far as the shapes and sizes, lumps and bumps. So that's really, really been beneficial for me in having the aviary is the being able to study the anatomy in a three-dimensional view compared to the pictures. I've downsized quite a bit over the years. I used to have a lot of puddle ducks and a few divers. I still have my canvasback that I've had for many years. I just lost a pair of redheads that I had for many years as well. They're really cool birds. I did have some hooded mergansers, which were very, very cool, especially the drake with all of his calls and things that he does to court the female. He was awesome. They were very expensive though, and Unfortunately, they need a high protein diet to do well, and so I didn't have mine for very long. They didn't do well for me, unfortunately. I recently got a couple of black ducks because I'm going to be doing some black ducks in the future here. We don't have black ducks out here in the Pacific Flyway, so I'm not able to go out and harvest any when I go hunting. I've had some hunters send me some SETI skins for reference, but I thought it'd be pretty cool to have a couple of black ducks. They're almost like mallards to me. They sound like mallards, especially the hen. She isn't too bad. She isn't too noisy. She does call a little bit, but not too bad. Not to where it would be an issue. That's one thing that I over the years I've always been very keen on, is making sure I don't have a lot of birds that make a lot of noise. I don't want to have draw attention to my neighbors that I have an aviary in my backyard. So I've tried to keep the noise level down. However, the widgeon were pretty loud, as well as the wood ducks at times, and the fulvous tree ducks. They pretty much they got me in trouble. As far as my honker here, I've had him for about 3 years now. He's been really good, except just recently. I think he's finding his oats because he's starting to call a lot more, especially when some resident honkers may fly over and he hears them, and he'll call back to them. Or if some dogs in the neighborhood start barking, he'll call out to them. So as long as he doesn't call like at midnight when there's a full moon, I should be okay. But the jury's still out on him, so I gotta hopefully he'll keep it down for me. So wrapping up, it's been really important for me as a decoy carver to get skins for reference. I hunt so I can get my own skins for reference. Before I skin out my birds, I always harvest the meat, make some duck sausage, some duck sticks. So that's been very helpful for me to get my own reference, when I go out hunting. Luckily, we have our hunting season goes into January. We get some really nice birds with some excellent plumage on. But if you don't hunt, you can find somebody that possibly can send you some reference. You can contact some game breeders, have some birds sent to a taxidermist and have them mounted for yourself for your own reference. But study skins are a very huge help for me when it comes to studying feathers, sizes, shapes, and using those for my pattern. Also when painting, I always have to have a study skin when I'm painting. It's really been beneficial. Having live birds, it's great to have live birds, but study skins are just as important for me, if not even more. As a decoy carver, it's easy for me to get hand in reference because I'm able to hunt and get my own reference. But for others, that carve like shorebirds, songbirds, or other type of wildlife that you can't go out and get your own reference in hand. I really admire the ability, the talents of people that carve things other than waterfowl or other things other than game birds, because it's really not easy to get reference, for that type of carving. So I really, I'd really admire, take my hat off to the remarkable talent out there of people that carve some remarkable things. So it's awesome. I'm always finding myself up against a challenging carving, with a lot going on with the anatomy, especially when I do decoratives. I come out here and I see my birds in certain positions, and I'll say, man, that is so cool. I want to carve that one day. I just love that pose, or I love what they're doing. So I'll take a picture of it and store it, and hopefully one day I'll be able to carve it. But that usually gets me in trouble with the anatomy, as far as when I go to carving. But that's what we have a lot of wood for, right? So you can just move on to the next block, and hopefully you can correct it on that next block of wood. But who wants to always carve a straightforward decoy all the time? You want to do something challenging every once in a while. So for me, having live reference has been really a help. Again, thanks to the Ward Foundation for allowing me to contribute to the world's virtual weekend. I hope you found this interesting of what I do for reference. Okay, guys, that's a wrap. Thanks for keeping everything down. Thanks for not acting like a bunch of coots. Go back to what you were doing. I'm Anthony Donato, and I hope to see you at the 2022 World Championships in person. Stay well. Cheers. Happy carving. You know, I may have some, actually may have a couple of hybrid right here, Gadwall black duck. Speaking of black ducks, hey, I don't think we should be doing that. You know, I'm doing a video here. Hello. I think, anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought here. So, you know, gosh, hey, I guess they're finished.
Greetings from the virtually modified Ward World Championship. I'm Tom Huntington, the editor of Wildfowl Carving Magazine. We are the only magazine for bird carvers. Published 4 times a year, we include start-to-finish demos on how to carve and paint your favorite birds, as well as reference photos, carver showcases, painting notes, and much, much more. So take advantage of the offers we have for you today to subscribe to the magazine, join our book club, or purchase some merchandise at special discount prices from our online store. And we certainly hope to see you in April 2022 at the Ward World Championship in Ocean City, Maryland.
Hello, I'm Pat Godden. Welcome to my workshop here. This is my carving room, and I have another room next door to me where I do my painting. I'm going to do a short little instructional video here showing you how to carve and lay out feathers and do some detailing as well. This is in association with the Ward World Championship. You'll be able to take a look at this when I'm finished with it. I'm going to do this in probably about 3 sessions here. Now this first one here, this deals more, you might say, with more creative, artistic things you want to do when you're laying your feathers out. I always think of laying feathers out as a compositional thing. So you really want to put a lot of thought into the layout of the feathers. It's going to pay off big time later. So this is actually a body for a goldeneye hen. That's one thing you want to think about when you're laying feathers out, because the feather shape changes on different species. I've got here, if you can see, the major feather groups are already shaped and outlined. It's the side feathers, scapulars, tertials, cape feathers. So I'm going to lay the feathers out here, and I'll show you how I approach that. Now, I always like to create a little bit of contrast from one feather group to the other, so I always feel the side feathers tend to come up from the bottom and sweep up to the top, like that. And then the scapular feathers tend to sweep downwards, so you get a contrast and flow between the side feathers and the back feathers, or the scapulars. So I still do this, even though I've been carving for many years. I still like to create some guidelines on the surface here with a pencil. So I'm gonna pencil in some what I call flow lines. So they sweep down from the breast, and now you can see how I'm sweeping them up. Come down, sweep up, nice flowing curves like that. And then the scapulars here, they flow in a little bit different fashion. They come down and they sweep from the center down towards the outside, like that. Now you can see right along this transition here between the scapulars and side feathers, you get this little change in flow. So that's really kind of important here, because this is a transitional area, and you really want to capture that difference in the flow in that area. One thing to keep in mind, the size of the feathers change from small at the front part of the feather group, gradually get larger as you get towards the end. And also they're small in the belly and they get larger as you go up. The other thing to keep in mind is the shape of the feathers. They're not circular shape, they're more elliptical shape. So as I'm penciling on here, you'll see I'm concentrating on developing not just the feather pattern, but also the shapes of the feathers. So I always start at the front end here, like that. Okay, I'm penciling in a little group there. Now, on a lot of birds, feathers will flow in small little groups. I call them subgroups. So here I have like a subgroup here, a subgroup here, and then in the middle I'll start another subgroup, about like that. Okay, and then as I come up from the bottom here as well, you can see now I'm following the flow lines. See how that feather, that little subgroup is starting to flow up. Another little subgroup down here. You can see the feather's a little smaller down at the bottom here. These subgroups are important too when you start carving, and I'll show that at the next stage. Often I don't carve individual feathers. I actually carve subgroups. So you don't have to carve every feather on the bird. They'll tend to look a little scaly if you do it that way. So I purposely will carve subgroups, and then with my paint I can define individual feathers with my paint later. You see also the shape of the feathers, the elliptical shape. The feathers on this bird are fairly typical of most birds. Now if you get another species, for example, some of the marsh ducks have, especially up in the scapula, have very long pointed feathers, and of course you have to be aware of that. See, now the largest feathers in that whole group are at the back end, back over here. You can see they're smaller on the belly. There's an anatomical reason for that too. This is the part of the duck that's in the water when he's swimming, or she's swimming, and those small, tightly packed feathers provide a good waterproof protection on the bottom side of the bird. So you can see what that looks like. Now, I'll do a little bit up here on the scapulars as well. You can see how I'm orienting those feathers downwards like that. So I get a contrast in feather flow right along this transition. If you have everything flowing the same direction, this way and this way up here, you lose the opportunity to create something really interesting along this transition here. And of course the feathers actually do flow that way anyway. Same thing on the back here, the feathers start small at the front, and as you progress towards the back they gradually get larger. So you can see here, if I show you, just define where the subgroups are. There's a subgroup there, there's one right there. Sometimes you work an individual feather in there, like for example there. Here's a subgroup. Another individual feather. Little subgroup up here. There's another one kind of down in this area. Another one here. This creates a lot more interest than just paint, composing the feathers so that they look perfectly patterned. And you get that scaly look if you do it that way. This creates a lot more interest. So up in here, there's a subgroup here. Subgroup here. There's a small little subgroup there. One here, up in here. So that's actually what I define that as composing the feather patterns, and that's really the real critical part at the beginning of your carving of the feathers in this area here. The nice thing about the pencil, you can erase it anytime you want and just start over. This side here is going to be something a little bit different in the composition. You can see I've exposed part of the secondaries here. So this area here, the composition is going to be a little bit different because of the exposure of the secondary feathers right here. So anyway, the next little session here, I'm going to show you how to shape these feathers. Now I have all the feathers laid out. You can see on this side, I did that in the last demo. On the other side here, I penciled those in. You can kind of see the difference in the composition of the feathers because of this, the wing speculum or the side secondary feathers are showing here. So it's a little bit different on this side, which is something I like to do, a compositional thing too. I like to create something a little bit different on one side compared to the other. Now I'll show you what tool I'm going to use here, and I'll explain why I use this. This is what I call a bullet-shaped stump file cutter or carbide cutter, and it has a slightly rounded end, which is what I want. Whenever I'm carving feathers, initially, it doesn't matter what they are, I want to establish them with nice soft edges. I can always sharpen them later, but if you carve them with a sharp edge, you'll always end up with that sharp edge. You have to deal with that at some point, and it's hard to get rid of it. So anyway, I want everything to be soft to start with. We're working with a hard medium of wood and trying to create the illusion of softness. So everything I want to do initially, at least, is going to be soft. So I'll start shaping these. Again, I start from the front and work towards the back. The analogy here is like these feathers overlap like a series of steps. So the top step is what I carve first, and then I'll step down to the next feather or subgroup of feathers. So initially here I have, for example, this little subgroup here. Another little subgroup there. Okay, Sam. The other thing I'm doing is I'm laying the side of the cutter down like this. I'm not cutting around like that. So when I lay it down on its side, what I'm able to do is use the side of the cutter to shave the wood away. Now here's another little subgroup. You're going to lose some of your pencil lines, and if that is a problem, you just, after you carve a little section, just go back and re-pencil it in. Usually you don't lose too much, so it's easy to remember where the feathers were. So here's another little subgroup. Notice that I'm carving the subgroups of feathers as opposed to individual feathers. The edges in all these transitions from the end of the feather to the next layer of feathers is soft. So I can come back and I can round these feathers. See, I'm just going to shape it. See, I'm just taking that down. Shape it a little bit. There's There's one individual feather. Now see, I've got a subgroup here, and I'm just going to shape there's an individual feather that comes out in between them. Later when you're painting, you can do some interesting things with that particular feather that's emerging from in between two adjacent subgroups of feathers. So there's another one there. Now at some point when I get further down into these larger feathers here, I will actually be starting to shape individual feathers. Now, I guess the one advantage of carving subgroups is there's less carving involved because you're forming groups of 3 or 4 feathers. You can see how fast I went through that whole section there. In a few minutes, I've actually shaped most of the feathers that I need on this side of this side feather group here. Now, I don't do this to save time. I do it because it's a much more effective result. Sometimes just a suggestion of a feather is all you need, and someone looking at it, they fill in the rest of it. You see what I've ended up with. You see the shapes? They're fairly well established, and the feather flow is established. See, everything's sweeping up. I'm really conscious of that when I'm carving these feathers. So getting that feather flow that I wanted to establish right from the beginning. Now I can do a little bit on the back here as well. It's basically the same thing. See, there's a subgroup there and an adjacent subgroup that's diverging from it. So I've got one going this way, one up in here, and then I've got another little subgroup that kind of emerges from between the two. This creates so much more of an interesting surface for someone to look at, and that's kind of should be our goal, to create interesting composition of things within the bird. And a lot of times I like to create contrast. Someone looking at this, they might not realize why they like it, but they know they'll like it because there's interesting things going on. just like on the side feathers, when I get down to these larger feathers, at the posterior end of the feather group, I'll often start carving individual feathers. I'm not quite finished that yet, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean this area up, sand it down, nice and smooth, and then the next video session here, I'll show how to put some detail in here. I'll build some little indications of feather structure with some feather splits. And then I'll come in and I'll show you how to grind some stone texture, and then also some burning techniques. And see what I have right now. See a nice interesting flow of these feathers as they come down. These come up, there's a little contrast here. And the nice soft edges. If this was another bird, like for example a pin-tailed drake that has the long pointed scapulars that come sweep down into here, I'd approach that in the same way. I'd outline them and define them with a soft edge, and then I'd come back later with usually I use a pointed diamond cutter, and I'll sharpen the edges up. But I can always go and sharpen the edges, but if I already have sharp edges, it's very difficult to soften them. So there's a really good beginning. You can see how fast I did that. And there's no little, you might say, little channels around each feather. I've used the side of the cutter to shave the wood away. So I've created one step, dropped down, created another step, dropped down. And that way you work very efficiently. You don't have to come back and remove little channels around each of these feathers. And that's really something you don't really want to have. So I'll come back shortly and show you some of the detailing techniques that I use on a surface like that. So in the next few minutes I'm going to show you a few techniques to do some finishing work on these feathers. What I've done here is I've re-penciled the feathers in. So some of those areas where I had subgroups, I've got the original feather patterns on those areas as well. There's a number of steps I go through here. One of them is penciling on the feather splits. Basically what I'm doing is establishing the feather structure. If you pencil on a few feather quills, that helps you to visualize the structure of the feathers. Obviously the barbs have to originate on the quill, and then they sweep out towards the end of the feather. So I can pencil on this little bits of detail like that. So everything has to converge back on the quill. Now with these soft edges you can do some pretty cool stuff. Like sometimes, like in this little spot here, I'll have little cross-hatched areas where the two adjacent feathers, the feather barbs kind of crisscross each other. If you had hard edges, you couldn't do that. So that carving method I use here really is a great advantage in doing that. Now, what I'll do is here, I'll show you a few techniques to do some more finishing. Now, what I'm going to use here is a pointed diamond cutter. You can kind of see that, I hope. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these feather splits in using the point of that. You can kind of push down at the tip or the base of the split, and then widen it out. This little area where I've got the cross hatching, so I can come across like that in that direction. When I do this other feather, I'll cross over the other direction. see what I've got here. I've got some feathers I've already worked on here. You can kind of see now, even though I haven't carved some of these feathers, I've established the shape and the structure of the feather just by putting in the feather splits on there. Now, the next thing I'll do is I'll show you the method I use to texture. Really, there's two methods of texturing. Basically, the stone texture, which is using a rotary power tool with a stone in it, similar to what I have here. You can see that. Basically, this is a cylindrical stone. You should use a light coming a diagonal across the surface so you can see what you're doing. But basically, I hold the tool like a pencil. The dominant texture here is heavier at the edge of the feather than at the base of the feather. Later on, I'll take my burning tool and I'll fill in the light texture, or the areas that aren't textured with the stone. I'll fill that in with the burning tip. Now, I always find that the texture I achieve with the stone is a little looser, a little bit more spontaneous and softer than what I get with the burning tip. There's some areas that generally I'll just use this method of texture because the type of feather I'm trying to duplicate suits that better. A lot of my decisions on the type of texture that I want to put on the surface is based on the color scheme of the bird. If you have a highly patterned surface with a lot of lights and dark colors on the feather, this texture works great. You can do a lot of fine painting on it, and if you have a monotone area that's very dark, like black, burning is nice, fine, deep burning works the best. That area will look more velvety. And real light areas, for example, white, sometimes I'll just leave those smooth. You say, well, it's not textured, but I regard smooth as a valid texture. And I do that a lot. You can actually make your whites look a lot more pure on a smooth surface than you can with any kind of texture or burning on it. Now, what I'll do now is I'll show a little bit of burning on there. Sometimes I'll take this Scotch-Brite material and just go over it lightly. That takes off any irregularities. I've also, in some areas, I've also put in some feather quills, and you can use your burning tool for that. Basically, you just run the tip on both sides of the quill. You can actually take a flattened burning tip and actually remove that wood away from the quill to make it stand up if you want to do that. Now this burning tip, if I've got a feather split, that heats just a little bit too much. If you've got a feather split, I'll often start right in the middle of the feather split and then start to work on both sides of it. Now this burning tip actually doesn't have a real acute cutting edge. It's a little bit more I guess the correct term is it's a little bit more obtuse. Now it's still very sharp, so it burns. You can burn very, very fine with it, but it won't burn real deep into the wood, which in most cases I don't want that to happen, because then I can paint on it much easier. I can actually crisscross fine lines of paint over top of those burn lines, and the paint just flows down into all the little burning crevices. If you burn real deep, then the paint just can't get down inside. Now this, those areas at the base of the feather, I'm picking up the texture with the burning tip. The areas that were very lightly touched with the stone, and as I come towards the tip, I actually lighten it up a little bit. So the dominant texture at the ends of the feathers is the stone texture, and the dominant texture at the inside of the feather is burning. It actually you can paint on that surface much better with that looser, more spontaneous texture at the end of the edges of the feathers. Okay, so that's just a few little techniques and tips on carving and detailing the feathers. See if I can get that in view for you. You can see what I did. There you go. Let me zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you learned a few things about detailing your feathers. And remember, there's a lot of technical things involved, but also be really aware of the artistic things, like the composing of the feathers, the layout, the flow of the feathers. That's all really, if anything, more critical than all the technical things. So really pay a lot of attention to that. Okay, so I'll end that here, and hopefully you've learned a few things there along the way. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Ross Smoker. I'm going to do for you a little demonstration on how I cut out cork bodies. Several people have asked me how I get such nice glue joints in the tail. So what I will do is I'll take a hunk of cork and I'll draw the top pattern, and then I draw the side pattern. When I draw the side pattern, I figure out where I want my tail block to be, and I draw around that tail block with a pencil, and I cut a notch out, and I glue my tail in while the block is square. So that gets me a super good glue joint. I use 5-minute epoxy, or which is water resistant, or waterproof glues, which is like a Gorilla Glue or a Type Bond 3 or something like that. So what I'm going to do now is show you how I cut one of these out. So let's go from there. Go right to the bandsaw. Now it's going to get noisy, so just warning you. You ready?
Yes.
Come in here. I'm going to cut the top view out first. Now when your bandsawing, you can see I have a rectangular block. You don't actually need that. All you need is 2 flat sides to go down to the fence of the bandsaw, the bed of the bandsaw. So, okay, so I cut out one side like that. I'm cutting out the other side. And you can see here, cork cuts super easy. Okay, so I got that cut out. I'm going to clean that up. Now I'm going to go over here to my gluing station. And all I do is I take hot glue in a hot glue gun, and you can see here, there's an area I'm going to cut off, that's an area I'm going to cut off, and that's an area I'm going to cut off. So what I'm going to do is just put a little dab of glue in all them little areas that I'm going to cut off. I'm not gluing up where I want my body to be, because it's hard to get that glue to come apart then later on. So a little dab of glue in each one of these areas. Get that good and lined back up. Then I'll come right back over to the bandsaw. You see, this doesn't take long. Readjust quick. Tighten her down. Gonna get noisy again. Have a little tub to put all your scraps in so they aren't able to pick them up off the floor. Never reach into the blade. Okay, so we're going to do this. We'll come up here. Shouldn't back out like that, but do as I say, not as I do. Okay, one more cut and we'll have this body out of here. Coming in for the next shelf. Over the back. Okay, and then when you do it, just throw that. Now since I have those glued, you can see there, pop, pop. Trim off that tail bud. And there's our body. So that's how easy that is. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being part of our virtual Ward World Championship this weekend. This is a wrap. Rich, what do you want to say to the folks?
I've had a great time. This has been fantastic. We've missed everybody and seeing them, but we were able to do something virtually. I hope everybody participated in our judging. We want to thank all our judges who participated and helped us. We want to thank everybody who is online and watching all the videos that are presented here, free of charge. Partake of everything, and we'll see you next year.
See you in Ocean City.